Section 2.4, our objective today is I can apply definitions of complementary and supplementary angles and state and use the vertical angle theorem. So first of all, let's define what complementary angles are. Okay, complementary angles are two angles. It must be two whose measures have a sum of 90 degrees. Okay, so again, the key there, it must be two angles that add up to 90 degrees. Okay, and for supplementary, are two angles. Again, notice that it's exactly two angles whose measures have a sum of 180 degrees. Okay, and the way I remember it is supplementary gives me the idea of super. So a super angle is one that is a straight angle, which has measure of 180 degrees. So super is the big one, so 180, and complementary is 90 degrees. Okay, so if I have, for instance, angle X whose measure is 30 degrees and angle Y, whose measure is 60 degrees, then measure of angle X plus measure of angle Y equals 90 degrees. And therefore, by definition, X and Y are complementary angles. So angle X and angle Y are complementary. Okay, so angle X and angle Y are complementary angles. So X is the complement of angle Y, and Y is the complement of angle X. If I have angle T, whose measure is 50 degrees, and angle U, whose measure is 130 degrees, then measure of angle T plus measure of angle U equals 180 degrees. Therefore, angle T and angle U are supplementary. Okay, so angle T and angle U are supplementary. Okay, so examples. So I have this diagram. Oops, a bit more. So this is point A, this is point C. I have a line also, B, E, and I have the intersection here is X, and I have ray X, D. And I know angle CXD is a right angle. Okay? So number one, another right angle besides the one that I have marked would be angle AXD. Okay, because since angle CXD and angle AXD form a straight angle, then we know that they must be complementary. And since, supplementary, then they must be supplementary. And since we know that that a straight angle has measure of 180 degrees, and we know that this one is 90 degrees because of the symbol, then that means that this angle must also be a 90-degree angle. Okay? So, what would two congruent supplementary angles be? Okay, well, it would be angle AXD and angle CXD. Okay, those would be two congruent supplementary angles. Now, for angles to be supplementary, they don't always have to be congruent. It's just in this case, in terms of our picture, they happen to be congruent. Right? So now, what would be, name two non-congruent supplementary angles? Okay, so we want to find two non-congruent supplementary angles. Well, if you notice in the picture, angle AXE and angle AXB form a straight angle, and so therefore they must be supplementary. So we can say angle AXB and angle AXE are two non-congruent supplementary angles. Okay, and for number 4, what are two complementary angles in the picture? Okay, well, in the picture we can say for sure that angle AXE and angle EXD, so AXE and EXD must be complementary because angle AXD is a right angle, and those, by the angle addition postulate, this angle plus that angle equals the big angle. Okay. All right. Here's another example, example 5. Angle C and angle D are complementary okay, angle C and angle D are complementary. Measure of angle C equals 3y minus 5, and measure of angle D is equal to y plus 15. Find y and measure of angle C and measure of angle D. Okay, well, if they are complementary, that means that they have to add up to what value? Okay, so if they're complementary, they have to add up to what value? So we know measure of angle C plus measure of angle D has to equal what value? Well, complementary tells me they have to equal 90 degrees. And so measure of angle C is 3y minus 5. Measure of angle D is y plus 15, and we know that has to equal 90. Now using our algebra, we can solve for y. So 4y plus 10 equals 90. Subtract 10 from both sides. Divide by 4, so we get y equals 20. So then measure of angle C has to be 3 times 20 minus 5, or 60 minus 5, or 55 degrees. Measure of angle D has to be y plus 15, or 20 plus 15, or 35 degrees. All right. Then we want to define what we mean by vertical angles. Okay, so part 2, let's look at vertical angles. Right. So when two lines intersect, so here's line L and line J. Okay? When they intersect, you will note that they form actually 4 different angles. So this is angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Okay? And angle 1 and angle 3 are what we call vertical angles. And also angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles. So angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles. Okay? So the theorem states that vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so by the theorem, I can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 because they are congruent. And I can say that angle 2 is congruent to angle 4 because by the theorem, vertical angles are congruent. Okay, and it makes sense because if this angle is 30 degrees, then this one has to be 150. If that one's 150, then this one has to be 30 because of them forming straight angles and being supplementary. Okay? So we can use that fact to solve for specific angles. So example, let's say I know that this angle is 2x minus 5 degrees and this one is 35 degrees. So I can solve for x by using the vertical angle theorem and saying, well, I know then that 2x minus 5 has to equal 35. Now just solve for x. Add 5 to both sides. Divide both sides by 2, so x has to equal 20. Okay, so 2 times 20 minus 5, that better equal 35 degrees because these two angles have to be congruent. So 40 minus 5 is 35 degrees. And once I know that this angle is 35, then I can figure out what this angle is because I take 180 minus 35 because I know those two angles are supplementary. so I know this is 145 degrees, and if that one's 145, that means this one has to be 145 degrees. Okay? All right, let's do one more example. Let's say I have this picture. Where I know that this angle is 35 degrees. Okay, now, and I want to know x. So are this angle and this angle vertical angles? Okay, to be vertical angles, they have to be formed by the same line. Okay, right? Well, this is the same line. Okay, so that one's okay. But this line is different from this line. Okay? So there's two ways that we could go about this. Now notice when I've extended this line, now this angle is a vertical angle to that one. So now I know that that angle has to be 35 degrees. And I know that this is a 90-degree angle, so this one has to be 90. So x plus 35 are complementary. So x plus 35 has to equal 90 degrees. So then subtract 35 from each side. So that's 55 degrees. Another way we could have done it is we know that this is 90, and 35 and 90 is 125. So this is 125. And this angle plus this angle equal a straight angle. So we could say 125 plus x equals 180 degrees. And if we subtract 125 from both sides, whoops. Okay. We get 55 degrees again. Okay, so many times there's more than one way to solve it.